Samantha's for making that happen. So welcome to another Lunch and Learn here at the Venture Center. Obviously, good to see some new faces and also old friends who come to help support us here. We're delighted to have you. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Wayne Miller. I'm the Executive Director of the Venture Center. And somehow I'm responsible for all of this, but I've got a great team here, and Ashley and Daniel, Nora, Jamie, Brian, and Jess. I'm missing everybody, but anyway, these guys rock it, making it very good. I'm very grateful to them. Over the course of the Venture Center's year, we have two accelerators that occur here. One is with FIS, the other is with the ICBA. And we are right now in week 9 of the FIS Accelerator. And the folks that you're going to hear from today are people who I think of being extraordinarily courageous. These are entrepreneurs who have started companies, seen a problem, got out of bed one morning and said, hey, I'm going to solve that. So we're going to get a chance to hear from them kind of live. Before I get started, I just want to make sure to say a couple of thanks. One to Samantha's for providing lunch today. They at least owe that to me because I think I pay the rent there because I live 2 blocks away, right? Secondly, the Tech Park, who does a great job with helping us make the 6th floor available, which is a great space for us, for not only you folks to visit, but also that you can tell the companies are here during your visit. And also the Chamber, who plays a big role in making these entrepreneurs comfortable in town and supporting our programs and making the good work that we're doing aware to people throughout this community. Ashley, thanks. Okay. So I thought I'd start with what's the definition of an entrepreneur? Or how many entrepreneurs do we have in the audience? Raise your hand. That's great. Courageous stuff. So Webster says that an entrepreneur is a person who organizes and operates a business or businesses taking greater than normal financial risk in order to do so. How many of you agree with that? That's pretty. And then there's another definition I like too. An entrepreneur means talking about a person with great innovative ideas that identifies the need for the creation of a business to fill a void. Entrepreneurs can be people of all ages, which is obvious, and their characteristics are creativity, imagination, and a thirst for work. Pretty good explanations, I thought. But I think for those of us who have started businesses, we look at a couple things differently today. We look at failure differently. We want to fail fast, right? We want to get that out of the way. We, for the most part, don't generate 50 to 80-page business plans like we used to do. We take a lean approach, which has been terrific in helping us define and really validate what we're doing. We talk to customers before we spend money, and it's really a much better approach. The other thing is, what do you think the average age of an entrepreneur is? Does anybody know that? 42. You win a prize. You get a sandwich. But anyhow, let me tell you about these folks. So they're in very good company, and many of you know much about our accelerators. So FIS, along with the Venture Center, produces this FinTech Accelerator. So our focus is on financial technology. These guys are a pretty good company. They come from 225 applications that we receive for this program to come to be with us in Little Rock for the 12 weeks. They're on the ground with us, learning about our city, our community, and the great resources and mentors that we have here to support them. We go through about a 100-day selection process in order to distill this down to 10 companies, and we do that with our partner, FIS, so we don't make these decisions in a vacuum. What we try to do first is to identify the problems, and then we look for solutions. So we figure these are the 10 or 12 problems that we're going to try to solve, and then we go out and we bait our hooks to try to catch the right fish. These 225 applications come from anywhere from 40 to 50 different countries, roughly about half of the states, and so it is a competitive environment. And the number of applications is sort of interesting, but really it's about the quality. And one of the things that we've seen over the course of the 4 years of this program is how the quality of our companies continue to improve. As our program improves and we get better at it, because it's always iterative, it's also about finding companies. And these guys are a little further along than what we might really think of as startups. Most of them are in a post-seed or pre-Series A position in terms of fundraising. And many of them have significant traction in market and actually have customers. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to start with Nikki down here at the end. And I'd like you to talk a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and what you're doing. And then I'm going to ask you guys a bunch of questions. We'll pass that down. Go ahead.
You'll pass it down. Everybody, oh, yep.
There you go.
We're live. Hi, my name is Nikki Senya. I'm originally from Australia and I live in Vancouver. I'm an exited entrepreneur that started again. So apparently you're bitten with the bug and you just keep going. How it happens. I am an active investor and director of a company called Volio. Volio is really unique and coming up with what we were talking about, that you started as an entrepreneur because you see a problem to solve or you think you can do it better. Sometimes I think it's a case of creating a wheel, sometimes I think it's a case of refining the wheel. And Volio is in that situation where it's refining a wheel because it's making investment clubs digital. Investment clubs are a very old concept and we're making it new again, recycle. So I'm really interested in what businesses can do in terms of creating connections and also, I suppose, building. I love building businesses. I love the problem solving. I love the intricacy that you get with trying to get to the most efficient solution for something. So I think that's what I'm passionate about as an entrepreneur. And I thought I could do that for someone else, or I could take the risk and do it for myself. So I've actually been working for myself now for close to 18 years. So just keep going.
Hi everyone, my name is Alana Levine, originally from Montreal, but in Vancouver as well. Whereas Nikki was bitten by the bug, I think it was contagious, and so I think I got latched on. So I started working with Nikki pretty early on in my career and realized entrepreneurship was actually something that I really wanted to do. And I found an amazing mentor to help me do that. So I agree with Nikki, it's about building connections, and I love the innovation aspect. So coming from a company that we exited from, for me, it was amazing to see the kind of influence that we had in a space, such a small company. I love the flat structure of the business, so being able to have that voice and influence within the company and being almost an entrepreneur within the organization that we had, and almost building out new departments, new products, new solutions. So taking a concept and almost evolving it further. So in the investment arm of the business, when we invested in Volio, I absolutely wanted to get involved because I love the concept of the product, and I felt like we had an opportunity with the experience that we have to support the entrepreneurs within the Volio organization in helping them reach new customers related to investments and starting their wealth journey per se.
Hi everyone, my name is Nick Sky, and Wayne mentioned that as an entrepreneur you wake up in the morning, you see a problem, you try to solve it. In our case, we solved this problem, we couldn't sleep. So I have $43,000 in student loan debt, and this is one of the reasons we started our company Changed. Changed is a mobile app that helps people make additional payments onto their student loan to help them pay that student loan off faster and move on to their next financial milestones. Before starting Changed, I went to school and got a degree in entrepreneurship, and everyone was asking me, why would you do that? What kind of job are you going to get? And every time I would go to a job fair, it's like, they would say, hey, so you're in sales now, right? Well, I'm like, I don't need to go to college to start a sales position. So what I tell everyone is that an entrepreneurship degree teaches you a little bit about every part of the business. So you learn accounting, you learn HR, you learn everything about the business, so you're not focused on a single thing. So Dan is my co-founder, is also my brother. We had been starting companies our entire lives. So whether we were kids, we're based in Chicago, so we would shovel snow and make money that way to help support our mom and stuff like that. And then we started a landscaping company. Then I started an e-commerce store selling men's and grooming products, specifically beard oils, which is why I have this pretty epic beard from what I hear. But from there, like going through college, we were accumulating all this debt. And then my brother Dan, my co-founder, he went out to try to buy his first home, and he got approved for the mortgage, but he decided not to buy his first home because he didn't want to add a $2,000 mortgage on top of an $850 a month student loan bill, on top of all the other expenses that come with day-to-day life. So he decided to take his down payment and invest it into a startup, which is the worst idea. It's a very risky investment, but we were lucky. So we were solving a real problem for ourselves and for 45 million other Americans. So we launched in 2017. We got some early traction with an Apple Store feature. Later on that year, we went out to LA to shoot for a Shark Tank segment. We ended up closing a deal with Mark Cuban, and our episode aired. That gave us another boost of traction. With our B2C product, we've sent over $3.5 million in student loan payments for our customers, which translates to decades of repayment saved, which is what our mission is. Coming here to the FIS Accelerator program, we're shifting to more B2B practice to help financial institutions compete with organizations like SoFi that help solve the biggest pain point for a consumer we like to call Henry. Henry stands for highly educated, not rich yet. So that consumer, you've heard of that, yeah. You've heard my pitch before, maybe. But you know, financial institutions are focused on a lot of things, but what they're lacking focus on is, you know, investing in this generation that's going to be a higher earning generation because they have a college degree, but they can't be financially mobile because they have all this student loan debt. So we're excited that we have an opportunity to talk to a bunch of financial institutions as part of this Accelerate program. And if any of you have student loan debt, please go to the App Store right now and download Change. We love any users.
Hi everyone, my name is Heather Holmes and I'm the CEO and founder of Genevity. Genevity stands for Generations and Longevity, and what we're really focused on doing is helping make sure that no one, not you, not any of your loved ones, run out of money in retirement due to health and elder care costs, which is the biggest cause of bankruptcy in retirement that can really decimate someone's financial security at any stage in life, particularly if you're getting involved to take care of a loved one. So we work with banks and other institutions to help them be able to help guide their clients to better financial decisions around these kinds of things. And I come from the opposite sides of the world. So I started my career in the corporate space. So I spent a chunk of my career in sales and then another chunk in market development. And so I worked for a big multinational company. I had a pretty cool job, which had me traveling and living all over the world. So there's a great term, golden handcuffs, and things are just great enough that it makes it really, really hard to leave. But when I was living over in Asia, I started to really realize that I wanted to have more control over my own destiny. And despite how good things were, like I was always felt like I was, never really had that control as long as I worked for somebody else. So when I moved over to Asia, I said, when I come back, I'm going to start my own company. I had no idea what or how or where or whatever. And it was a little scary, but I started taking those first steps while I had that job, and that led me to take the next steps. And probably one of the best pieces of advice I ever got was from a mentor I had when I lived in Singapore in the technology space. And I said to him, well, how do you know when it's time to make the leap or to make that change? And he goes, if you're asking me that question, you're not ready. And I said, well, how do you know? And he goes, you'll just know. And I was like, I'm gonna, excuse me for swearing, but I was like, that's a bullshit answer. And, but sure enough, about 6 months later, it got to the point where it was just more painful to not be working on the startup every day and too painful to be at work. And he was right. I just knew. So for those of you who are out there who are just thinking about it, I would just say take that first step.
Excuse me. So my name is Paul Proctor, and I'm with a company called Sendmi. I actually started my career in financial services. I worked for the banks that now we are looking to serve, and did really well there. I mean, much like Heather's experience, had a really posh job and didn't really want to leave. But over the years, I got in a situation where you wanted to affect change and you just couldn't, right? And so I started thinking about ways that I could affect change, and over again, it was pushing me in some entrepreneurial direction. So I went to business school and met a bunch of folks at business school that wanted to do the same thing, and started a few different businesses. In fact, my first business was a crowdsourcing platform for independent film, which ended up being a failure and a huge learning experience. But on the heels of that, started another company that was an Uber for massage that was fairly successful. We sold to a competitor, but always wanted to get back to something in financial services. I became a big fan of the concept of life's opportunities being at the intersection of opportunity, skill set, and market. And I think that's kind of the backbone of really what keeps entrepreneurs going. I mean, entrepreneurs really need to be passionate about a project, and this particular project for us has been, and I'll talk about it in a minute, has been grueling. I mean, just incredibly difficult. I think when you do things in the financial technology space, it's a tough market. It's not like you spin up an application, there's no barriers, and people adopt, and away you go. You have lots of contingencies. So what we did is we actually created what we're calling cross-border payroll. And cross-border payroll services the 232 million foreign nationals that live around the world and that are sending money home to their parents. And in most cases, this ends up being an incredibly stodgy, expensive, painful process. I myself have been sending money abroad for over a decade, and think specifically about one instance where I lost $2,000, and the service provider that was, that had lost the money was basically just saying, oh, we'll find it, we'll find it, we'll find it. Well, when you lose $2,000 for 2 weeks, it's kind of a big deal. And so that got me thinking about this, and just kind of serendipitously at the tail end of my last startup, I met some guys that were working on a digital currency project. And what we realized is that if we took the market away from where it sits today and into a different vertical, it created all these interesting efficiencies. And I think when you find that opportunity that really truly is that intersection of your passion and your skill set in the market, you really don't want to do anything else, and you're willing to run through walls to make it happen. I think that's really been my experience.
Thanks, Paul. Hey everybody, I'm David Potter, the CEO and co-founder of Curu. I'm from Maryland, and the company is based in Charlotte, North Carolina. One thing that I think is guaranteed in business, unlike in a lot of other aspects of life, is that in business, things are guaranteed not to go your way. It's not really a guaranteed outcome for every decision. You're going to get hit on the chin a number of times. So one thing if you're entering into entrepreneurship is, be ready, be resilient, because things won't go your way eventually. And if you're used to, always excelling whichever sport or whichever task, your profession, things get hard. So, be sure you're ready at the gate to be resilient. A little bit more on myself is, I think just one more thing in entrepreneurship as well, in this resilience, what feeds into it is having a really strong why or purpose. So starting with a pain point, a problem, especially a personal problem, is where I started. So leading up to Curu, I was studying finance on a Fulbright scholarship from Bill Gates. But as I was applying for off-campus housing, I ended up getting rejected for every single housing opportunity, 13 out of 13 rejections. And this time wasn't because I didn't have enough money, the scholarship would have covered it. It was only because I didn't have an established credit score. So I was turned down 13 times, really no path to approval. So then I started working on what really became Curu. Curu is a service that helps people boost up their credit scores to get approved for housing, loans, and other lending decisions. Kind of fast forwarding a little bit more to today, started out with a consumer app. We started getting pulled from lenders and other businesses to adopt their solution natively to them. So instead of getting rejected, you have this path to getting approved. So you boost up your credit score instead of having that loser's experience where you just turned down. Now you can actually have these real-time steps to get approved. Anything else I want to throw in there as well? And overall, our mission is to eliminate credit rejection. So I think we're really on the path to getting that done by working with banks and other lenders. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Thank you, David. I may need to stand. There we go. Very good. Thank you, Dave. Thank you all. That was great. So I don't know that we ever kind of get up in the morning and make the decision that we're going to be an entrepreneur. Right? It sort of happens based on your stories, your whys, and so forth. David, while you have the mic in your hand, answer the question. Are you an entrepreneur and why?
Absolutely. I think I'm definitely an entrepreneur for, maybe if I was to give off the way, a person's definition of entrepreneur is you're willing to take risk, take progressive risk for an undefined outcome, and ideally to solve a problem or provide value. And that's, there's a lot of things that will lead you, unsteady. So if you're willing to borrow a couple words from actually Nikki, if you're willing to kiss a lot of frogs, if you're willing to take a lot of hits to the chin, and be resilient and move through that to solve the problem you deeply care about, I think you're kind of in that bucket of an entrepreneur. Something that I didn't really mention in the story is that Fulbright scholarship really allowed me the space to discover my calling. And before actually I completed my undergrad, I actually left school early to pursue this. So I put a lot on the line in terms of really knowing my calling, having clarity in that, and I truly embody what I would define as an entrepreneur.
Thank you, David. It's great, Paul.
Sure. So, excuse me. I think one of the most apt descriptions of an entrepreneur is that you're a pirate. You're not sailing for the Royal Navy. When you work in corporate America, you're sailing for the Royal Navy, and then when you decide that you're going to do something different, you're the guy that is shooting holes in the sides of ships and really disrupting the establishment, right? And so, I look at my personal experience in being in corporate America and thinking all the time, why are we not fixing these issues? And I think if you find yourself constantly questioning the norms and trying to figure out better ways to do things, then you're an entrepreneur.
Thanks.
I would say I'm an entrepreneur, but before that I was an entrepreneur in the corporate world. And that was really nice because I got a chance to work on new concepts and ideas that I bring forward, have a budget and start getting these things going. But I think, as Paul was saying, I think part of the challenge through being the entrepreneur is because it's the Royal Navy, when fiscal years come to a close, innovation tends to be the first thing that gets cut. So after seeing a few of these ideas that we started incubating and starting to do, and then have them get cut, and then see somebody somewhere out there in the world actually come up with a similar concept and just go wild with it, you realize, you need to control your own destiny, and that turned me from an entrepreneur to an entrepreneur.
So I was really lucky. I was raised in an environment of entrepreneurship. So Dan and myself were raised by a single mom who immigrated here from Poland, and the first thing she did was start a business. And I mean, as an immigrant, it's got to be 100 times more difficult not knowing the language, not having anybody here to start a business. So that's kind of all we knew. No one in my family was in like a corporate position or worked like for another business. So we only saw entrepreneurship. And so, I mean, I would consider myself an entrepreneur through my environment and what I'm doing today. But, entrepreneurship has this sexy kind of connotation, like, oh, he's an entrepreneur, she's an entrepreneur, she's doing this and that. But 98% of it is not sexy. 98% of it is, I don't want to say arguing with your co-founders, but figuring things out with your co-founders, trying to put out fires, figuring out what fires can burn for a little bit longer while you put out the other fires, and just kind of, the roller coaster is something that I'm kind of addicted to. Just like the waves of emotions that you feel as you're building a company. I think, even if, or when we succeed with change and help more and more people, and we eventually exit, there's very little chance that I'm going to start a venture, just for the excitement of it.
I think Heather put it really well. I was probably an entrepreneur as well, and I'd say now I'm an entrepreneur because I realized my inherent nature was never settled for the status quo. So within the organization, even starting out early in my career, I made a lot of waves. Apparently, people complained to HR about me all the time. And it was mostly because just saying, they did. And it was because I never accepted what was given to me. If I thought we could do it better, more efficiently, even within a larger organization, we had 100 employees at the time for this other company. And for me, I just loved the idea that I could make that influence and make that change if I was willing to put in the effort, to do the research, to present the solution, not just finding the problem, but presenting the solution, and then seeing the effects of it and the impact it can have, not just on the business, but for the clients that we worked with, providing a better service, a better solution, and also a better culture and environment within the business as well, so that other people also had the opportunity to contribute. You see someone else doing it, it can inspire others. And for me, I think that's what's created that kind of like unlocked the door for me. I never necessarily entered into my career thinking this was the path I was going to take, and it's definitely the path I'm taking moving forward.
After hearing all of these amazing comments and observations, I'm just trying to think, okay, how do I make this different? I think for me, one of the things was that I always loved to build. I always loved to build on something and solve a problem. But the other thing is that the last company I had, we started with 3 staff, we self-financed it, and we got up to 100 people. And it took 16 years. So people talk about entrepreneurship in a way that, you flip a business, you do this, you move on to the next. It was my last business was an overnight success for 16 years. And in that period of time, we solved so many problems. But the key factor for me was probably more a heartfelt position, was that I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to make a difference to the people that worked with me, and I wanted to make a difference to the clients that we worked with. You know, it's a very successfully commercial business, but for me it was the commitment. I think sometimes because it's so hard and because it's so difficult and because it's the path less trodden, I think you have to find some piece of it that is much more than just the money or just more than the fame or the position. It's got to be something that you actually feel a passion towards. And for me, it was solving problems and building businesses and making a difference. And that was the thing that was able to sustain me. So I don't even necessarily think I call myself an entrepreneur. It's just something that I can't help do. So when you talk about labels and things like that, I don't even think that I put that label on myself. But the path is so treacherous, incredibly rewarding, but in moments. The treachery seems to be a lot more of the drudgery of the whole thing. So I think it's when I talk to anybody when they're going to go down this path, it's definitely not for the lighthearted. And it's a lot to me, which I didn't sort of realize, it's a lot to do with risk management. It's a lot to do with risk management, understanding how risk mitigation, understanding about how to, I love this saying that you just had, you know, knowing which fires can burn a little longer. I think we're all in that situation where it's a fire, let's put it out. But sometimes you just have to let it burn because you don't have the resources to be able to do everything else. So I think when people are considering this or wanting to stay committed to it, there's got to be a balance. I see things in diagrams. So it's almost like this balance between the reward and the risk, understanding that you've got to live a life in the middle of it and being able to integrate what your life passions are, plus being able to make a difference or contribute or build something, because it's the whole thing. I don't think you can do this in isolation. I'm very fortunate, and I'm one of the very few people that I've met that my business partner is also my husband. So we've actually been working together for 20 years, building businesses. And that puts a lot of strain on a relationship, but I explained it to someone else. For me, it's the place of most trust. I mean, I really admire Heather running the business that she is on her own, because I don't know if I could do what she did. Because to me, having a business partner has someone that you can truly, really trust, that has the same objectives as you, I think has been integral to what I've been able to do in sustaining it over so many years.
It's a rare situation too where that can work. You know, as I'm sitting here looking at you guys, I just realized that virtually all of you kind of started on some form of an altruistic bent. You all were trying to solve a particular problem and trying to do good at the same time. And I think that's interesting, but more importantly, starting there and then finding that there's a business in there, right? Because it's wonderful to do things that are charitable and help people and do good. But at the end of the day, we got to pay our mortgage, our student loans, make sure our families get money, that we can rent a place, that there's longevity to our family, we don't burn our wealth in bankruptcy. I'd like to have you speak to that a little bit. There's obviously a point there, there's an infraction point where you say, hey, I'm gonna go do some good, wait a minute, I need to make this a business. Can you speak to that? Is that question clear?
How I'm interpreting it is clear. I'm not quite sure whether I'm answering your question.
Yeah.
So it was really interesting for me is that a lot of people see money and wealth and making money through a lot of different lenses. For me, it was always a benchmark of accomplishment. It was like winning the race. Getting that client and making the money was like winning a race to me. So, and I'm very competitive. So to me, it was like, how do I make money in this? And how do I do this? That was part of my pot of what to solve. So it was almost like I came up with the business concept, and the first thing for me was, well, how do I make money for this, and how do I scale this, and how do I do that? So it was never, as much as altruism, I wanted to make a difference, it was always part of the accomplishment of what I wanted to do. And I think that a lot of times when I see entrepreneurs come into a business, they come at it from the problem-solving perspective, but not the commercial angle. They don't necessarily see that to me, it's almost the next breath you take after the idea is how do I make money, not the 10th breath down the way after I've got this perfect product. To me, it was very closely aligned, because otherwise, to me, it was like, well, I'm not going to be in that race because I can't win anything. So even though it was definitely purposeful, part of the accomplishment for me was the revenue.
To add to that, and I can't take credit for this because this was Nikki's model actually, and I really admired it because it allowed me to buy into it as well, is we attributed, in a B2B environment, so our customers are all businesses for this other company, we attributed all of our growth and revenue tied to their success. So our commercial model was directly related to our contribution and value to our customers, which made it really easy for us to see that we were making a difference because as they grew, we grew. So I really liked it from that perspective. And one thing Nikki taught me actually, which really resonates me with to this day is, and maybe I'll ask the question to the audience, is what's the one common denominator between all businesses? That people, though. It's money, absolutely, but it's people. And so one other thing I realized is when looking at the commercial model and how you make money from an organization is looking at the people within the organization that you're serving, because they have busy lives. They have, how is this going to help them do their jobs better in that context? So I think that's another kind of helpful bridge in looking at is the people that are going to eventually make the decision to work with you, how do you get them to buy into it? Because that makes the commercial relationship a lot easier.
So for us, the problem we're solving is our North Star. It rallies everyone on our team to work for longer, because 98% of our team has student loan debt, so they understand the problem they're solving. And especially when you're growing a business, before we even launched, everybody was working for free. There was no financial benefit for being part of the team. So the problem we were solving was really driving us to put a lot of effort into growing this company. But that being said, this wouldn't be here if there wasn't a monetization strategy for us and a commercialization. One of the reasons we're here is because we see this opportunity to grow through the financial institution channel. And Dan's our CFO and our money guy, and I have to ask him every day if I can spend $1 here and $1 there, and where we're going to bring in our next users. So the problem you're solving is going to help keep you motivated when there might not be a good user growth month, or when something isn't going according to plans. Like, hey, you know what? Let's sit down. We're really trying to solve this problem. The rocky road ahead is gonna smooth out as long as we keep our focus on the problem we're trying to solve.
Let me stop you there for a second, Nick, because I want you to elaborate a little bit further. So the question, the way I didn't maybe ask it entirely correctly, but the point is that you guys obviously have this problem, right? And so how did you get to figuring out how would you make money at this, right? Because ultimately, if nobody buys what you have don't have a business, right?
Right.
So if you can maybe just speak to that a little bit, maybe Heather.
So we looked at what was in the market currently and what people were paying for. We knew that we can create enough value in what we were offering to be able to charge what we're charging for our product. So, we took steps to figure that out. So initially when we were thinking of how we're going to charge for our product, it's either going to be a percentage of what we're saving them or a one-time, monthly subscription fee, or we wouldn't charge them at all. We would just make money off of using, the information we collect to refer them to other partners that we can get commissioned off of. So it's a learning process, and we're continually kind of figuring out the best way to provide enough value, but at the same time, make enough money for the company to be sustainable. Brian actually told me today about a little Facebook exchange he had with one of his friends, and his friend had said that I don't trust companies that don't charge for their services. And he was saying this on Facebook, though, which is a company that doesn't charge for their services. So it's kind of ironic, right? But it's if you're providing enough.
Do you trust Facebook, though?
I don't. But if you provide enough value, people are going to pay for your services. So it's just figuring out the value component of what you're offering, and then figuring out the monetization strategy as you're building it.
Awesome. Thanks.
I'm thinking here. So For us, we started out, we knew the most important thing with what we were trying to do, because we're talking about some sensitive stuff, was to be building out an experience and make sure that was something that resonated with people. And then as we were working on that, we got approached by a really large financial institution. And we thought that they were after our data, you know, and we were thinking that's what they were interested in with us. And as we really started sitting down with them and understanding, they were like, no, like, you know, what we need is a way to engage our clients and our customers, and these are these big concerns that they have, and we don't know how to do it. We don't know how to help our advisors talk to clients about it. And we were like, oh, that's like the easy part of what we do. I mean, not that it's easy, but it was the part that we had there. And so, so that really led to the discovery of then I picked up the phone and called my parents' financial advisor, who's like a really short to the point, like, you know, type of person. And an hour and a half later, I got off the phone with him. And he wouldn't stop talking about the problem and how difficult it was, and how, you know, he didn't know how to engage with people and have these sort of more emotional conversations. So it was kind of this evolution of talking to the people to understand. And then, you know, which then led to where we are today, where we work with the banks and institutions. So I think it was just more of getting out there and being open to what other people were seeing with what we were building, and listening and learning, and then evolving as we went along the way.
Thanks, Heather.
So I think there was actually kind of two prongs to your question. I'm going to try to take a crack at both of them. The first is this idea of constrained resources. And, you know, I think, Nick, you talked a little bit about risk mitigation. A lot of to deploy against the problem, right? And what happens on the entrepreneurial journey is, and specifically with my journey, because as you recall, like my first entrepreneurial journey failed, you have your pad. This is what you're using to operate, and you just kind of keep falling and falling and falling, right? I mean, every month you're burning cash. And then your business fails, and guess what? You say to your wife, yeah, I'm going to do this again. And she's like, really? I'm like, really? And you keep going down and down and down. And then you have a win and it comes back up, right? Well, so I remember hearing this guy, Jason Calacanis, speak. And Jason is, he's probably one of the world's super angels, right? So he was an early Uber investor. He runs a podcast, super bright guy, and has over and over again picked the winners. But he talked about how, well, you know why so many entrepreneurs are young is because they don't have anything to lose, right? Well, when you're an adult and you have children, you have a lot to lose. And so he said, you know, if you're an entrepreneur and you're an adult, you're basically a psychopath. And I'm like, wait a second, am I a psychopath? And you have to kind of deal with some of the things that come along with being an adult, having responsibilities, having to provide for your family, and still trying to make a business that's burning cash successful. I had my 12-year-old son ask me, Dad, when are you going to get a real job? I'm like, really? So anyway, that's the first part of the question, is that resource constraints and those resource constraints. And I think that there's an active and kind of proactive approach to making sure that as an entrepreneur, you build up reserves so that the risks that are set against the problem you're trying to solve aren't just a total gamble. You know, you're planning for the fact that it's going to take 2 and 3 times longer than you think it will on the onset. And the second part is, you know, kind of determining how you find revenue in what you're doing. And for us, it was about taking cost out of the model. You know, our business is super mature. It's 200 years old. Western Union was delivering money via Stagecoach back in the day. And the cost was falling and falling and falling, but it's still pretty high. In fact, on average, it's about 7.6% just to send funds. So $7.60 of every $100 is going away to fees. And so we're thinking to ourselves, this is a gigantic market, it's $600 billion. If we can reduce the cost by 1%, that's $6 billion that goes back to people. And so, you know, certainly there's a huge kind of altruistic element to what we're trying to do. There's a cause behind it. We believe in improving the financial infrastructure of the developing world. But, you know, you still have to make money. And so figuring out a way to, you know, in this case, reduce the margins. And for us, it was changing verticals. It was from going from what's called a money service business to making it a payroll-based product. If you can find those those little tweaks to models that reduce cost and preserve some revenue so that you can be successful, people are going to want to buy the product.
All right, so how did we discover a path to revenue? So we have a consumer-facing app. For a lot of people, getting out or like making your first app can be a really exciting moment, maybe a launch party, celebrate with people, post on social media. But one thing kind of behind the scenes is you can get caught up in creating a product, maybe even creating a great product, solving a big problem. But that's not necessarily the exact same thing as making revenue. So this whole time you're putting in a lot of time and money behind the scenes to make this great product. Went through like multiple beta phases, finally got out for like public launch. That was good for like live users, got a few hundred users on the platform at first. And around this time we also started raising our first funding round. Not too much funding was really coming in. We're going beyond like our friends and family. And end of the day, that kind of put a lot of pressure on us to figure out, what was our best way of bringing in money. Well, your customers will pay. So that was kind of our first discovery into figuring out how to start funding our business initially. So we started looking into the app, looking into why people were using it, and discovered when it came to like improving your credit score, you typically had a goal in mind: getting a loan, getting a credit card, getting a mortgage. So we kind of just quickly tied 1 and 2 together, and other companies like Credit Karma already had this kind of similar model. So something we thought of before, we just didn't really put that much attention onto it before the nature of business forced us to like figure out how we're going to make revenue. With that, revenue started coming in, we gave more mind to that, and then that also made it easier for us to, reinvest that into getting more customers, and ultimately then using that data to raise our next funding round. So right now, one of the attentions with revenue is making sure we're profitable, so that line never actually goes down. So that's one of our ongoing challenges.
Thanks, David. Hold on to the microphone and ask you the next question. That was great. What's been the toughest part of your journey with Curu?
Yeah, so one just like immediately on top of mind was with a friend that I was just texting. So early on, I guess what the text message was it was his birthday a few days ago. So I decided to like send him like a happy birthday message. Figured there was no bad blood, so yeah, you can go ahead and shoot him like happy birthday. I'm in good spirits. But prior, why I needed that kind of cognitive thought to think, should I send him a message, was because back kind of in the first couple of years with Curu, he was one of our early members. I'm also one of like my best friends, so like went to college together and everything, and worked with us for about close to a year, maybe 9 months. Put a lot of passion behind it, and when you're starting up a company, it really is all about team, developing that culture. It's not employees. You're actually building up something, having an impact what you're building. So everyone truly cares about it. So it's hard enough to, for whatever reasons, have to like let go of a employee, let alone like a team member. In this case, there was about a month where he wasn't really as productive as some of our members. So we were, kind of touching base on that and stuff. But then he was just dealing with a lot of like internal personal issues, just like he was kind of in a internal kind of toxic state, and being in a high pressure like startup environment may have not been the best thing at that time. So it ended up being like this week where on like Slack or group messages, he was like saying impolite things to our members, and that just kind of hit the fan too quickly. So immediately spoke with him, had a chance to maybe like find a different path and have him speak with some of our other members, but he just he wasn't in the right environment at that time. So we had to like let go of one of like our best friends and great team members. But on top of that, it didn't go too nicely. He was building something he cared about, so he just wanted to just like go of that. So it like led on to like a week of very hard conversations, emotionally, personally, business-wise, and that was definitely one of the hardest situations and decisions I had to go through.
So,
We're good to go now.
Thinking about what is the most difficult challenge that we've been through, it's funny because when you think about the entrepreneurial journey, I always kind of liken it to being on the battlefield, right? And you're on the battlefield, like you see some guy's arm get sheared off, and there's blood spewing everywhere, and like people are dying. Sorry, a little bit intense. But then, after a couple months, you're like, it's the exact same experience, but it's Tuesday. It's just normal, right? And so there's so many tough things that you deal with as an entrepreneur. They're not, it's hard to narrow it down to just one. I will say that in our business, the biggest shift is that we're asking compliance people. So at the bank, you have compliance people, and compliance people, basically their job is to mitigate risk, but really what that equates to, and I hope there are no compliance people in the room, but what it equates to is that their job is really to say no, right? And so you're going out to this group of people and trying to convince them that this new and innovative product is going to bring in tons of business. Well, they don't care. They don't care about the business. The compliance people care that the business that they have is protected, right? So for me, I think the biggest shift has kind of been a shift in the way that I think about how we have to approach that particular group of people, because it's not about hey, we're going to go out and make a lot of money together. They really don't care. It's about making sure that what they've already created is protected. Anyway, that's been very tough.
I think Paul just crushed it. I think like when you first kind of start, it's like you start to think there's something wrong with you because it's the emotions. I mean, like the crash and the highs, and sometimes multiple times in a day, and you're like, what is going on? And then it just kind of normalizes, and you just understand that's just the way it is. And if you wait 5 minutes, things will get better. So I think you can't say things a whole lot better than that, but I think probably one of the hardest things for me is my friends are like my family, and you can get so sucked into what you're doing with work that too much time lapses outside of it, where the rest of life is kind of passing you by. And so I think it's hard sometimes to remember about that balance, and to take that breath, and that there needs to be life outside of your company, and I'm by no means good at it. That was my New Year's resolution, and something I'm trying to work towards being better at is that balance or harmony.
I'd like to echo what both of you guys said. And just for us, one of the things we always kind of have top of mind and we struggle with is that we've got a product roadmap that's 3.5 years long, and our team is, we've got 4 developers. So we either have to kind of put things on the back burner on the backlog, or we have to raise more money. And we don't want to be a company that just goes out there and just raises a ton of money and gets the news. We want to grow a solid business with an awesome team that's passionate about what we're doing. So just kind of making those decisions on what's priority and prioritizing things on the development side is something that we're always kind of dealing with on a day-to-day basis.
I'll touch on 2 things maybe different from these guys, just to switch it up a bit. One thing that I've been exposed to with Volio that's been really interesting is when you take on, and same thing with us, we had a pretty long trajectory of a roadmap for the technology. And it's a really amazing platform, but you have shareholders that you're answerable to. So, you have your shareholders who are invested in seeing you succeed, but they also want to make money and they want to see your business succeed. So it's kind of having that balance when you have customers that you're trying to manage and that aspect, but you have your investors and your shareholders as well. So trying to find that balance and keeping everyone happy and making sure that the business is going in the direction that it needs to. And I think the second thing, which kind of ties into that, is recognizing when it's time to pivot. When, there may be a sunk cost or an opportunity lost, but taking that step and recognizing when it is time to pivot is actually where a business can make or break itself. So, in the case of Volio and seeing the opportunity for the business and pivoting means taking resources off maybe some really cool feature development, but it means opening the doors to amazing opportunities and being able to partner with financial institutions. You have limited resources, so finding that right point where you pull the trigger and you just go, I think, can be a challenge for some companies, but it's been amazing for us to see and be involved in.
I think the biggest challenge in the business that I have had, or the businesses I've been involved with, has been myself. Because I think the situation is that I think an entrepreneur needs 3 qualities. One is the risk, one is the kissing the frogs, and the other one is to be able to deal with discomfort. Because every single thing that I've ever done in my businesses has pushed me past the point of my comfort. Whether that's public speaking, or whether that's taking on more risk with money than I ever thought I was going to, or whether it was I mean, the biggest company that I ever worked for was the company that I built. It was 100 people. I never thought I would lead a team of 100 people. That's very confronting because I'm now responsible for all of these people's mortgages and their lives and their children and all of the rest of it. So I think the biggest challenge for me has been myself and my comfort level. And then also when your business is, I'll say the word attacked, but when your business is impacted significantly by legislative change or competitors coming into the market, it's then what are you going to do? Because it becomes incredibly uncomfortable because we all get into the norm. You know, this is normal, whether it's our normal or somebody else's normal, and then something changes. I always looked at the reason businesses failed. And what I discovered in my own empirical research is that most of the time businesses implode from the inside. They don't fail because of an attack on the market outside, because you can pivot, you can change, you can innovate, you can do a whole range of different things. But really, it's the management team, it's yourself, it's whatever else. So the biggest challenge in the businesses has been me.
Thank you. We've got about 10 minutes left, so I'd really like to open up to the audience. But I'd like to say thanks to these guys. You know, being an entrepreneur is very courageous, and it takes guts. And these guys have kind of reached out today and really shared with us some of the things that they've experienced and the approaches that they've taken. And hopefully, the intent of today is to inspire some of you to consider that path and to take those risks. But let's give them a round of applause. Thanks. Any questions? Please.
So, and this is a question directly for each of you guys, if you don't mind. The average CEO reads about 40 books a year, and I'm a huge reading CEO. What are, I guess, one of the earlier books that you read that helped shape your mind in terms of growing your business? And what is one of the books that maybe you're reading now that's helping you through this phase of building your business?
I have two books that I read in my 20s that have been completely pivotably impactful on my career. One is called The E-Myth by Michael Gerber, which is about licensing, and that was the only resource that allowed me to scale my business because I documented everything and everything had a manual. We had 3 people and we had manuals, right? So that was a really big impact. The second book that I read that, again, in my 20s that massively had an impact was Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Most boring book I have ever picked up, but I would highly recommend the audio book to it. But the thing that I talk about now constantly is begin with the end in mind. And I think that was the one out of all of the 7 habits, that was the one that made the most difference to me. I actually gave up reading instructional books or books of people's processes probably about 15 years ago. And the reason I did is because I chose to go my own path. Not because I don't think people have amazing contributions, but I've learned more from these guys in the conversations I've had in the weeks that I've been here than anything that I could have picked up in a book because it all becomes situational and personal. So that would be my take.
I've read both of those books as well. They're great, I recommend them. Another one, and you can even watch her YouTube video, is a woman called Brene Brown, Daring Greatly. One of my biggest struggles in becoming an entrepreneur, discovering that side of myself, is being vulnerable. And it has a lot to do with taking that risk. And so she's really amazing at kind of recognizing what the barriers are for individuals and being willing to go outside of your comfort zone where that true growth actually happens. A friend of mine recommended a book recently that I've just started called Predictably Irrational. I forget the author, he's an Israeli author actually, but it has a lot to do with consumer behavior and understanding how people make buying decisions. And so far I stayed up till 12:30 last night, I just started it, and I'm 150 pages in, so didn't get a lot of sleep last night, but it's pretty captivating so far.
As soon as you started talking about books, I opened up my Audible app. So I don't have the attention span to sit there and just read because I'm more likely to just switch over and like have my laptop and do some work. So I read passively while I'm driving, working out, or doing whatever. I really enjoy stories, so we listen to a lot of biographies, whether autobiographies or entrepreneurial biographies. I recently listened to the narrative life of Frederick Douglass. That was a great biography, just listening about his life and everything like that. And just any biographies or like books about a startup's journey and like the stories they've faced. And another book that I would recommend is a book called Bold, which essentially talks about the democratization of any service that's first monetized and eventually, like they give email as an example, where first it was a service that was, cost a lot and it was expensive, and then eventually it got democratized to now where no one in their right mind would pay for an email or something like that. Bold, yeah.
A book that I love that I think is a good entrepreneur journey and a good thing about like staying the course, but can kind of just take you away from all this is The Alchemist.
Yes.
I think like that's probably been one of the just such a profound book on me that I've given to so many people, because I think the message is just it's just the journey, and so I really love that book, and I think that that's just a very transformational one. I'd say right now I'm listening to 33 Strategies of War, and I find it very interesting. I really like it because it's telling me different stories about different leaders and the different kind of battle situation they went into, and it's fascinating. It's fascinating about like teamwork, it's fascinating about strategy, it's fascinating about being the small guy, it's like all those different things. So I find that interesting. And then one that I started and I haven't been able to finish because sometimes it hit a little nerve a little bit too close to my heart. Right now I'm just trying to scroll back down to it. It's called Lost and Founder. And that's by the founder of Moss, which is a really famous company. So, and he's a very raw story, and I think it's great because he talks about all the different decisions and all the times they ran out of money and all the different moments, and so I think that would be another one I would recommend. So
The probably the most transformational book that I read early in my career was a book called The People's History of the United States by Steven Pinker. And I know that doesn't seem very, entrepreneurially, if that's a word, but basically it's a book that tells the history of the United States from the perspective of people at the bottom of the food chain. And for me, and especially as it relates to the business that I'm currently in, I think being an entrepreneur is about solving for humanity's problems. We get in these kind of, the Valley, in my opinion, Silicon Valley is kind of stuck in one of these phases where they're not really addressing world problems. They're kind of just making it easier to live. I joked with somebody from Google Ventures. I'm like, what the world needs? The world needs another pub crawl app. Because we get focused on these little things that make life easier, but we're really not focused on the big things that really can address a huge amount of people across the world. And so I think that the biggest takeaway for me in reading that book was just raising my level of empathy to be able to look at a problem like I'm trying to solve today and say, could I deal with paying 7.6% to do this? Yeah, but can everybody deal with 7.6%? And really, no. And so, it's about kind of finding yourself in situations where you're being empathetic to problems that you may not have, but you see an opportunity to solve. The other book that I'm reading right now that I think is actually really interesting, and I read books about problems that I'm currently dealing with, and we're currently raising a round of funding, and so I'm reading this book called The Secrets of Sand Hill Road. Sand Hill Road is kind of the street in Silicon Valley where all the top venture funds sit, and it's purely informational. But being able to kind of dig in and understand the mindset of the venture community and be able to kind of balance your perspective so that you don't have, first of all, what's kind of regular and is normal in the fundraising process, but also that you can once again, kind of have some empathy for that side of the equation where they're making hugely high-risk investments, then you can kind of have a more balanced perspective as you're approaching the negotiation.
A couple books that were pretty influential to my growth in entrepreneurship. One to start is The One Thing. And the book opens up, well, the book is by Gary Keller, who is a big real estate mogul. And the book opens up with him asking, what do Michael Jordan, Michael Jackson, and Mozart all have in common? And his answer to this is that they all did just one thing: the piano, dancing, basketball, boxing. So it kind of is correlating that, one of the correlations with greatness is staying focused and doing just one thing. It has a lot of takeaways, such as if there's one thing that you could do today that would get you closer to your goal, and keep you focused on doing that as opposed to just checking off a to-do list. So that book for me was influential. Another one is The Effective Executive. So I think everyone, whether it be in a business or in your own life, you're kind of the CEO of your own life. And with that, there's two key roles. One is you should always be working on what is most important. And two is you need to effectively make decisions. So this book is by Peter Drucker, who is the father of business management, kind of on Harvard, and has a lot of different studies on business management. In this book, he goes over how to effectively make decisions. So whether that be if you have full information or like in the entrepreneurship world where a lot of times you have very little information, how to still effectively make decisions. So I think that framework is pretty critical and influential to just navigating life. The book I'm reading now isn't very entrepreneurship oriented. I'm a little bit more like spiritual, like enlightening. So there's I think a 16th century poet named Rumi. He has quotes like what you are seeking is seeking you and things like that. So just a lot of kind of food for thought, food for the spirit. So what I'm reading now.
Great, thanks. Got time for one more question.
Peter Drucker, The Effective Executive.
Any other questions? All right, great job. Let's hear for these guys again. So I have a job for you guys to do, and I need your cooperation. And it's not a hard task, but I'm going to ask for your help. We are actually filming a branding video today here for the Venture Center to help promote what we're doing and grow our business and grow the Venture Center. So what I'd like to ask you to do is I'd like you to get up, go around the conference rooms, come back, resume your seats. I want you to sit there for 2 minutes and then you all can leave. And the reason we're doing this is Dustin, who's filming this for us right now today, is we want to be able to demonstrate a scene of the room filling up. And you guys didn't all come cooperatively together. So there'll be a fine for that next time. But if you wouldn't mind doing that, it would be super helpful. Okay? So good. We'll just go around the back and then just come back in. So Ashley can probably be helpful with this as well.